Biotechnology. It's a hot topic. It's a current technology. I mean, there's a lot of questions around it. Are we creating artificial humans? Is it right? We're going to talk about that today with our three panelists. Professor Margaret Somerville is Samuel Gale Professor of Law, Professor in the Faculty of Medicine, and Founding Director of the Center for Medicine, Ethics, and Law at McGill University, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Her books include The Ethical Canary, Science, Society, and the Human Spirit, and The Ethical Imagination, Journeys of the Human Spirit. Professor Somerville has an extensive national and international publishing and speaking record and frequently comments in all forms of media. Her many honors and awards include the Order of Australia, 7 honorary doctorates, and the UNESCO Avicenna Prize for Ethics in Science. Let's welcome to the Global Freedom Report Professor Margaret Somerville. How are you?
Nice to meet you on this.
It's a pleasure. You're credentialed both as a scientist and an ethicist. How do you reconcile the disparities between the two fields? How do you generally handle it when your scientific curiosity meets with your ethical considerations?
Well, my ethics comes first and the science comes second, but really they're not, sometimes you can have problems that you have to say, well, there's a clash between them, but on the whole, that's not true. But, we don't always agree with various people about what we think is ethical and what we think are not ethical. But certainly for me, it's very important that ethics comes first.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here on our panel. Thanks so much for joining us. Dr. James Hughes is a bioethicist and sociologist at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, where he teaches health policy and serves as Director of Institutional Research and Planning. He holds a doctorate in sociology from the University of Chicago, where he also taught bioethics at the McLean Center for Clinical Medical Ethics. He is author of Citizen Cyborg, Why Democratic Societies Must Respond to the Redesigned Human of the Future, and is working on a second book tentatively titled Cyborg Buddha. Since 1999, he has produced a syndicated weekly radio program, Change Surfer Radio. He speaks on medical ethics, healthcare policy, and future studies worldwide. He's a fellow of the World Academy of Arts and Sciences and a member of Humanity Plus, the Neuroethics Society, the American Society of Bioethics and Humanities, and the Working Group on Ethics and Technology at Yale University. Dr. Hughes is Executive Director of the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies, a center for voices arguing for a responsible, constructive, ethical approach to powerful emerging technologies. Let's welcome to the Global Freedom Report our second panelist, Dr. James Hughes.
Very nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. With the advent of socialistic programs like the proposed Obama health care plan, do you find that questions of medical ethics are more prevalent these days? Has the practice of modern medicine become more a question of ethics than healing?
Well, I am myself a socialist, and I know that the president and his healthcare policies are not. I wish that they were more socialistic. So I'll have to object to the premise of the question, but I think that the questions of healthcare priority setting have been with us for quite a long time, and I don't think that they're going to change substantively under the president's proposed reforms. We need to figure out what kinds of health care we want to provide, since we can't provide everything for everyone.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being with us. He's only 38, but Father Tadeusz Pacholczyk has earned a doctorate in neuroscience from Yale University, 4 undergraduate degrees in molecular and cellular biology, chemistry, biochemistry, and philosophy, and 2 degrees in advanced theology from the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome. In 1999, Father Pacholczyk was ordained a priest for the Diocese of Falls River, Massachusetts. He has spoken before state legislatures at roundtables around the country and serves on the Ethics Committee at St. Anne's Hospital in Falls River. Father Pacholczyk is Director of Education for the National Catholic Bioethics Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Let's welcome to the Global Freedom Report our third panelist, Father Tadeusz Pacholczyk. Is it okay if I call you Father Tad?
Yes, that's fine, and thank you for having me as part of the show.
Well, it's absolutely a pleasure. And we're about to come up on a break, and so I have just a basic question I want to ask you, but I don't want you to answer to the other side of the break, so you have a couple of minutes to answer. You hold a doctorate in neuroscience from Yale. You hold degrees in molecular, cellular biology, chemistry, biochemistry, philosophy. How do you reconcile science and religion?
Well, I mean, I would say science strikes me as one of these kind of cultural languages of great importance today. It carries a great authority, a kind of pervasiveness in the culture. And, of course, religion similarly impacts culture and society. These are two languages that, in the minds of some people, compete or even putatively conflict with each other.
Father Tad, I'm going to ask you to speak up a little. Your voice is very soft, and I appreciate that, but we need to hear you.
Yes, okay. So I was saying that that science is a language of its own, and religion is a language as well, and both sometimes have competing claims. And I think that to be able to speak both languages and to, in a sense, have worked in both areas, it does allow for one to attempt to build bridges, which I feel are very much needed in our day, in our age. So, I don't come at it with the kind of classical view that science and religion are in conflict over everything, and I don't think they're actually in conflict over anything essential. It's usually scientists and religiously minded people who are in conflict, and usually they're in conflict because one or the other has failed to grasp their own proper domain. So, my background in this, I feel it assists me in trying to delve into some of these questions.
It's almost like a mediator, where you understand both sides, and therefore you can help bridge the gaps between the two.
Absolutely. Just yesterday I was down in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was at the Georgia Institute of Technology, and I participated in a debate on human embryonic stem cell research with a proponent, an individual who had a spinal cord injury himself and is involved in running a center that is doing clinical trials with human embryonic stem cells. And the fact that I was there in the midst of a room full of research scientists carrying out this debate, and they all knew that I myself had, spent years in a research lab, it lent a certain credibility and an intense interest as this debate transpired.
I'm sure it was fascinating, actually. The Internet has made a tremendous amount of information on any topic readily available, not all of it accurate. It has also provided a medium to promote all manner of paranoia and conspiracy theorizing. How do we filter out the truth from this morass of information? Specifically, when it comes to biotechnology, what are we actually capable of doing today as opposed to, what you might find on the Internet? Where does the technology currently stand? Let's start with Professor Somerville.
Oh, that's a very tough question to answer, and we don't agree about it. Some people think that whatever we can do with our science, we ought to be able to do them, and some of us, and I belong to the opposite situation, where I think there are some things that we shouldn't do because I believe that they're wrong. And one of those things would be, for example, that I don't think we should use, for example, embryos as part of what we do to forward our science on that.
Margaret?
Hello? Yes.
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing. That's one of the problems in replying to this. But
you don't have a radio on, do you?
No,
Okay.
No, I don't.
Please continue.
I'm sorry. Well, I think that's really what I said. I mean, we don't agree. Some people think that some of the things that we can do, there's no problem about them. We ought to be able to go and show, do whatever it is that we want to do. Other people say, no, there's some things, no matter how much we might get benefits from doing some of the science, that we believe that that's wrong, and we also ought not to do it. So there's a lot of difference between how we see these things. I start from the sort of the idea that we should respect the natural, and then if we can justify doing things that are not wrong, then it's okay to do those things. But I think it's up to the people who are going to use the new science to do things to show that that is acceptable, that it's ethical, that it won't destroy the sort of the system that we should protect for the future, because we've got to look for future generations, and what we do now will affect what's right and wrong in the future.
Dr. Hughes, what are we capable of doing today? And what I mean by that is not what they just say we're getting to, but I mean, what can we really do? We know we can have artificial arms and things like that. How far has biotechnology gone? Where is it at today?
Well, I think we're pretty close to fulfilling a lot of the ancient aspirations of humanity. We're able to heal the sick and allow the lame to walk and allow the blind to see and the deaf to hear and fulfill human capabilities in a variety of different domains. So I don't think that valorizing the natural gets us very far in ethical analysis. But I was interested in your earlier question as well about paranoia. I think there is quite a bit of paranoia on the web, a lot of misinformation. And I don't know what the answer is to that. I see it as a general problem with my students trying to increase their information literacy and their capacity to parse valid information sources from invalid. But the amount of misinformation that, for instance, Fox News in the United States spreads to its listeners, who turn out to be the least well-educated about public policy matters as a consequence, is, I think, ample evidence that people tend to filter out anything that doesn't agree with their political point of view.
Which, of course, is a problem because, on the Internet there's so much information that people will tend to go and repeat the information to which they resonate, or with which they resonate. And that may not be factual information, then rumors spread, and then paranoia and the whole thing, and it all falls apart.
Yeah, I have to, one of the calls I get about once a month is from people who think that the government has implanted something in their body and is doing medical experimentation on them. And that's a complicated issue because there is a history of unethical government-sponsored experimentation on soldiers and civilians, and I don't discount the possibility, but I think that probably 99% of the people who suspect such a thing have a psychiatric problem and not an actual, being a subject of a military experiment or something. So I don't discount all conspiracies. There are conspiracies in the world. That some of these technologies are being researched in ways that I don't credit as ethical. But, in general, back to your other question, which is what's possible. I'm on the techno-optimistic end of the spectrum. I think that we're on the verge of being able to do quite a few cool things for humanity.
Cool things for humanity. Father Tad, this thing about paranoia and by the way, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that somebody's not out to get you, of course. But
right.
It's true. People get paranoid. People get crazy. People get conspiracy theorizing. But then again, there's some truth in all of it. How do we sift through all of this morass? You can see both sides of the issue. You can see the ethical side. You can see the scientific side there. The people who go on the Internet just get it all. It just gets all thrown at them. How do you filter it out today? How do you get to some sense of what's really happening out there so that you can evaluate the ethics or the morals of a given situation?